And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson. Checking in with you midweek, an extra special show, adding one to your feed, because while we are just tearing through win totals, and a reminder, we've got SEC East already in your feed, SEC West coming up on Wednesday, and then our win totals locks, just sort of getting you ready for those Thursday locks episode. That will be coming on Thursday. So I'm starting to realize that we also have this news and we've got all this buzz, and longtime listeners of the podcast through the Cover 3 edition, through the 24/7 Sports College Football Podcast edition, through multiple rebrands. You've known that we are all about trying to bring you the buzz from camps, from scrimmages all across the country. And the reason we are able to do this is because of 24/7 Sports. So, Bud, that's why it's you and I. We're going to try to run down a list of some of the biggest takeaways, some of the news, the players that are making a buzz. And the longtime listeners have been calling for this old jingle, but I don't know how familiar you are with players that are making a buzz. The knockoff of the old 24/7 Sports College Football Podcast theme song. But I mean, I guess I could only say, are you ready to buzz it up?
Let's buzz it.
Players that are making a buzz. Camp buzz. Camp buzz. Camp buzz. Talking about players that are buzzing.
All right. Well, let's start up in South Bend, where the buzz has to be the fact that a quarterback battle has been settled. You know, it stands in comparison to where things are going at Texas, where it doesn't seem like anybody's jumping up and taking the job. We had excitement about the youth that is there for Brian Kelly and Notre Dame, but Brian Kelly's already stepping out, and he is named, after just 1 week of camp, Jack Coan, the starting quarterback. What are you hearing from South Bend and from Notre Dame, and what does that tell you about either the way Coan has played or sort of where the status of that quarterback position is right now?
Sure. So look, you get Jack Coan from Wisconsin. He obviously lost the job there at UW, but he showed that he was competent. And that's really what I expect out of him at Notre Dame. You know, like, I'm not sure that he's going to be a great player. I think he has a chance to be a good player. And they have some seriously nice weapons to throw to out of the backfield in Kyron Williams and at the tight end position, where they feel like they have the best tight end room in the country. And honestly, it's hard to disagree with them, Chip. Outside, obviously, will Braden Lindsey or Kevin Austin, now that they're back and healthy, will they be the guys who can take the step up there? From an efficiency standpoint, Wisconsin under Jack Coan was actually pretty competent in 2019, right? They were 14th in SP plus passing, which I think Notre Dame would happily take. Now, 95th in passing explosiveness, which would bring up some concerns about his ability to push the deep ball, particularly with all the nice play action shots that Wisconsin sets up in that offense. And Notre Dame's going to play a much harder schedule than Wisconsin typically does, because Wisconsin is in the Big Ten West, which is kind of a cakewalk compared to what Notre Dame usually faces, including this year. I don't think he profiles as a superstar, but in my mind, personally, I never really thought this was going to be a battle. Like, they went and got him. Like
Tyler Buckner just excited the fans, right? Like, I mean, there has to be built in for a coach, Brian Kelly, who takes a lot of responsibility for the offense. I mean, Thomas Reese is, the quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, but he's, former Brian Kelly player. I think that, if he's going to go ahead and name Jack Coan, the two takeaways for me, and I haven't decided which one I land, was either Tyler Buckner's not ready or Jack Coan has improved from when we saw him last at 2019. And that's that has got to be encouraging for Notre Dame fans, because like you mentioned, in 2019, he's very efficient. He's the kind of player that when we're going over our notes in March, Tom's sitting here and he's like, dude, Chip, I think Jack Coan was a really good quarterback for Wisconsin last season. Like, oh, wow. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't remember him screwing up many games. Do you think that we have to entertain the idea that he has impressed the coaching staff enough to go out and seize this job?
I think you have to entertain it. I don't know that you have to necessarily buy into it. I think it's probably some combination of Jack Coan showing up and at the very least not regressing from what he was at Wisconsin and hopefully progressing, right? And then Buckner also likely needing more time. I didn't really think Buckner was going to be a plug and play guy as a recruit personally. I thought he had nice tools, but would need more development coming out. So this kind of fits with that.
Right. They both were on campus for spring practice. One of the reasons why the Notre Dame fans were all over it. As we turn our attention now, let's move west to Eugene, Oregon. First scrimmage comes back with Mario Cristobal's reviews, and Mario Cristobal did not hold anything back. He came out and said that Ty Thompson had the best performance of any of the Oregon quarterbacks. Ty Thompson, incredibly high ceiling player. Another situation very similar to Notre Dame where we have an established veteran who is Anthony Brown, former Boston College quarterback, came over. We remember, I would say that Anthony Brown's most successful football came at the very end of the season, conference championship game, and then in the bowl game where offensive coordinator Joe Moorhead was even doing some two quarterback stuff with Tyler Shuck. But that was where Brown seemed the most effective to me. His statistics, I don't have the full report pulled up here. And of course, Duck Territory, 24/7 Sports, Matt Preem, the rest of the group, like they do a fantastic job. If you're an Oregon fan, go subscribe, get VIP right now. I feel like for Mario Cristobal to come out and single out Ty Thompson having the best job, it brings up an interesting conversation that we even were having in the group chat. Like, how does that change how you view Oregon? Should Ty Thompson continue to make this a little bit more interesting in terms of a back and forth?
So I think it's interesting because I'm not really a total believer in the Anthony Brown. I don't use the word hype, but I'm just not convinced that he is a real difference maker. Maybe I'll be wrong about that. Certainly could be. There are some people who really do believe in Anthony Brown quite a lot. But Ty Thompson, I think his ceiling is probably higher than Anthony Brown's, and it's one scrimmage. But yeah, we really like this kid coming out of high school. We had him as a top 80 player in the country, a top 10 quarterback in the country in the class of 2021. Who knows? If we've been able to see these guys more in person, maybe he's even a little bit higher. But physical tools, 6'4", 210, 215-ish, really nice arm, decent mobility. I think he probably does offer a little bit higher ceiling for them, Chip, if he's able to take the job, but also potentially a lower floor, given that he is a true freshman. But Joe Moorhead operates an extremely QB-friendly offense, and it wouldn't shock me to see Ty Thompson win that job. I was always curious, why did Tyler Shuck leave? Right? I mean, was he going to get beaten out by Anthony Brown, or did he read the tea leaves and say, "Ooh, Ty Thompson's coming in. Ty Thompson maybe is the goods"?
So, it's impossible for me to look at the Oregon quarterback battle and not consider the week 2 trip to Columbus, where I don't know, like, would you, is Anthony Brown really just there to be able to get the Ducks through like that, like one of the tougher road games that Oregon's going to play the entire season, if not the toughest road game? Oh, it is the toughest road game. I will say that. Is it one of the toughest road environments that Oregon's going to play the entire season? If I'm an Oregon fan, I might be okay with Anthony Brown starting the first 2 games and knowing that the kind of progress that Ty Thompson has made that allows for that game 3, week 3, week 4 kind of changing of the guard where the veteran ends up stepping aside and then the next one up comes in and takes over.
Chip, it's an interesting question because I think it poses, are you, if you decided to start Anthony Brown at Ohio State, are you starting him because he's better? Are you starting him because you really think he gives you the best chance to win that game? Or are you starting him because you don't want to, quote unquote, ruin Ty Thompson if he's not ready? There's all kinds of questions there, and I don't have the answers on that, right this second. But certainly, if Anthony Brown starts, given how well Ty Thompson has played so far in Oregon's camp, fans are going to wonder the entire year, all right, hey, can we upgrade this? What happens here? And if Oregon was to have a poor year, and I don't think they will, then there's a decent chance I think Ty Thompson could be your starter by year end, if not already. But I do think that, what has Anthony Brown done to guarantee or to suggest he should be the absolute favorite for this job? He may be the favorite, but not to the exclusion of all others.
You've got to say it's high floor. That you mentioned the variance, as we're talking about any of these freshman quarterbacks that have arguably higher ceilings based on projections, based on recruiting ratings and recruiting rankings. And I don't know, it will be an interesting challenge to me of where the decision-making lies between Mario Cristobal and Joe Moorhead. And, maybe I'll be overstepping or, expanding too much, but Joe Moorhead already showed in conference championship games and bowl games, just like, we'll use both quarterbacks. Maybe we see something along those lines. Mario Cristobal, because of the nature of offenses that have been fielded under his leadership, leads me to think he's like, well, you know what, Anthony Brown, he's at least going to get us in the right looks. He's going to get us, he's going to be able to hand the ball off to Travis Dye and CJ Verdell. Their offensive line is so good. Their running backs are so good. Personally, I don't think that that's going to be a way to keep up with Ohio State, but it could be a way to avoid total offensive disaster.
Yeah, right. I think there's an argument to be made that Ty Thompson gives you a better chance to beat Ohio State, but also a better chance to get your doors blown off.
Yes. Like you could.
Are you doing image management for recruiting purposes? Because if that staff, and look, I bet you that staff thinks they can win that game if everything goes right.
I hope so. I mean, if you are on that staff, you better hope you can win that game.
Sure. But do you think they can win that game? Because I do not.
No, I do not.
I don't think they have the same caliber of player that an Ohio State has. I've already bet Ohio State in that game back when it was still in the single digits.
It's 11.5 now.
Yeah, I got them at 8 or 9, I think. So I don't think Oregon has much of a shot to win that football game. But if you keep it close, it does help you in recruiting. That could factor into this too. Just as if I'm Mario Cristobal and Ty Thompson plays well in a scrimmage, I am absolutely talking to the media about this big time. I'm hyping him up because to me as a head coach, I'm sending the message to recruits, hey, we're going to get these high profile, high star kids. They're going to come in. They're going to play early, right? They're already making a splash in their first fall camp.
All right, let's turn our attention to Baton Rouge. A lot of different names that have popped up for good reasons and concerning reasons. What's really stood out to you from the Go 247, the Shea, the rest of the great team there, Billy? What are you starting to sense from the Tigers?
I think even more offensive weapons for Max Johnson to throw to is a major thing that's standing out to me. Make sure to check out the Go 247 YouTube page, by the way, getting that excellent podcast up on video as well. Shout out to the team over there. The young receiver stepping up in addition to Keishon Butte, I think has to be just really good news for LSU. So that's kind of the first thing that stands out to me. And then the next thing that stands out to me is the Glenn Logan injury, right? Maybe not season ending, but expected to miss a couple weeks at least. And
I think it's a knee.
It's definitely a leg or maybe a foot. Maybe it is a knee. Excuse me.
Well, we are concerned about it. It is a lower body injury that potentially could be lasting well into the season.
Their run defense last year was pretty abysmal, and it's not like Chip Kelly's gonna not be able to handle that. He's gonna have some stuff schemed up for him.
You already got that UCLA game on lock when it comes to the Chip Kelly running attack against an LSU defensive front that could be shorthanded and hasn't really proven to be like dynamite stopping against the run anyway.
Exactly. Right. I mean, like Chip Kelly does all this stuff where they're reading defensive tackles on plays and they have a million pullers from all directions. And, one of the ways to beat that up is just to be physically dominant. And I think Glenn Logan's a good player. So if you had him, that would give me more confidence that LSU goes in there and takes care of business in that opening game at UCLA. But man, I don't know. This is interesting. They've done a really good job recruiting the receiver position though on the flip side. And I know they lost Eric Gilbert, but these young guys are pretty nice. And Keishon's no joke.
Yeah. Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors. I get in this habit because, my rhythms and routines and listeners do too, but every signing day, we really get called into action. You got to cram for it. Like it's a class you haven't been to in a couple weeks right before an exam. You take in a lot of information, you put out a lot of information. And then often, it's going to be a year or two. And then all of a sudden they flash and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember writing a quick blog post about him after he made his announcement on CBS Sports HQ or whatever. All of a sudden we're really starting to see, especially at the skill positions, these wide receivers start to come in and immediately have an impact. Like I remember discussing Malik Neighbors as a really good sign and a really good part of that LSU recruiting class. And now I don't know if he'll be starting week 1, but if he is having the kind of impact and leaving the kind of impression that you do to be able to get this kind of camp buzz, I feel like that's an awesome sign for Max Johnson and the rest of this passing attack, much to your point.
And look, if they can't run the ball again, like last year, their running game was not good. If they still can't run the ball, they're going to have to chuck it around a lot. So having all those weapons certainly helps.
Like you cannot guard all of us. Right. Like you've already got to be concerned about Kayshon Boutte.
And they're going back to the Joe Burrow, Joe Brady style offense right now. We'll see how that works without Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Tolliver and all those guys. But we'll see.
You know what
Marshall, not Tolliver, excuse me.
Another little note in my pad from LSU is like their offensive line might not be awesome this year.
Yeah.
Which adds to the wild variance factor of what we're dealing with this LSU team, where if their offensive line isn't awesome, I'm not going to expect the run game to be able to take great steps forward. And if the offensive line isn't awesome, then it's going to just lead to absolutely bananas offense that might more resemble like an old Big 12 kind of scenario than what we're used to seeing maybe from your traditional LSU.
I mean, SEC West, right? Ole Miss,
Arkansas,
Mississippi State, LSU, Mississippi State. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty much all the SEC West. All right, let's go to the SEC East. We were talking about a little note here. This one's we mentioned the buzzy news is that Luke Doty is out with an injury, something that we discussed during the SEC East win totals podcast. Bud, what have they done to look for a replacement there?
So I don't think this guy's going to start, but who knows? Georgia started Stetson Bennett last year, and I have a hard time thinking this guy is worse than Stetson Bennett, right? So Zeb Nolan, he's a GA, which means graduate assistant for the Gamecocks. He was at Iowa State, and then he was last year Trey Lance's backup. Trey Lance now of the 49ers, I think it is.
Yeah.
Who got picked obviously out of North Dakota State. He was his backup last year. They have decided to move him from the GA role to the QB role because he has a year of experience left. Now, that's a pretty interesting decision. You can read into that what you will. One way might be, hey, gives us more experience. He might be our best quarterback. He probably is not, but we'll see. The other way is, oh my God, they don't trust the kid they got from St. Francis, and this QB position is a disaster, and Bud's under, over 3.5 win total bet that he made earlier at a great number is totally nuked, and that's not great. So I still think this is pretty interesting. Of course, the media loves the move. Pete Thamel wrote, or quote tweeted here, when I profiled Trey Lance last year, he and OC Tyler Rule, however you say that, raved about Noland. Loved his moxie and intangibles. This move makes sense. I mean, moxie, intangibles. I don't know these undersized. I can Google him real fast if you'd like me to.
I've got him pulled up. He is.
Is he undersized?
No, he's 6'2", 224. So not undersized.
That's plenty of size.
That's pretty good size. And like it's you're right, because I was almost thinking in my head is like, how does he have this? So 2016 red shirts at Iowa State. 2017 plays in 4 games with 1 start. 2018 threw for 360 yards and 2 touchdowns against Oklahoma. And then junior year transferred to North Dakota State, lost the quarterback battle against Trey Lance, did not play last season. So yeah, only 2017, 18, and 19 of actual action. He's got 1 year left, and now it looks like he's going to be stepping in to at least provide some depth for that South Carolina offense.
He seems to have become much better since high school, by the way. Senior season of high school, completed 79 of 169 passes. That's
it's not a good completion percentage for high school football if we're talking about college quarterback.
Who is he? DeAndre Francois? Like, man, it's hard to be that inaccurate in high school and still go to a P5 school.
Joe Milton says what's up.
Yeah, for real. Same area.
Yeah. Coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to Auburn, Alabama, and some other notes from around the country. Next. So one thing that has stood out, I will credit Josh Pate. He mentioned this on Late Kick. I forgot whether it was the extra or the Sunday episode, but he reminded his viewers and his listeners something that I think is good to pass along, and it is that when you find out that the offense is struggling, you can say, hey, our defense is awesome. And when you find out that the offense was lighting it up, you could come back and say, well, that's not a good sign for our defense. So when we hear that Auburn's offense is slow going, where do we start to assign that credit or blame based on what we know about the personnel of Auburn's defense, based on what we know about where Auburn has to go in its transition from the Gus Malzahn era into what Brian Harsin wants it to be?
Yeah, so this is an area which I'm fairly concerned about Auburn, right? They were 46th last year on offense. They lost some key contributors on the outside. We have Brian Harsin's new offense coming in. We'll see how Bo Nix can translate to that. But both quarterbacks, TJ Finley as well, the transfer from LSU, apparently had some turnovers in the scrimmage. Offensive line maybe didn't look quite so good. And this is typical. Most teams, except for maybe Ole Miss, usually have the defense ahead of the offense as of right now. Some reasons for that, obviously, they're just running their base stuff, the stuff the defense sees pretty much all the time. There's the thought that offensive line takes a little longer to gel than the defensive line because it's a little bit less of a individual game, a little more of a team game on the offensive line side. But Auburn is, man, I don't know if I'm buying in on this right now. Tank Bigsby, I think, could bail them out, and this is too much to read into, obviously, just a couple interceptions in the first scrimmage, but
no, that's what we do. It's what we do here in Mid-August.
But you'd like to hear some encouraging stuff, right? And I just don't know. I don't know that you are. I'm not gonna get into that right now, but I'm interested to see how this team goes.
Oh yeah, about Auburn in general. There is a slow leak from the Cover 3 brain trust of Auburn stock that we are like quietly selling right now and really, really hoping no one notices, just in case.
And listen to our SEC win totals tomorrow for Count 'em Up.
Much more, yes. Let's go ahead and go to the Iron Bowl rivals. What's been your general sense of Bryce Young is the established starter? What's your general sense of sort of where this offense is and in Alabama in general, based on what we've heard from the first scrimmage and from camp so far?
Well, I think the number one thing is Trey Sanders, right? If you go to Bama Online, really, really positive comments so far about Trey Sanders. Trey Sanders is a player I know fairly well. I covered him as a recruit. He was from Port St. Joe. Then he moved down there to IMG. Just a massive dude. I mean, like you're gonna look back there and with the helmets on, you're like, wait, is that Najee? Right. Yeah. I mean, just his thing was always, can he stay healthy? I know he had, I think, a foot injury one time, and I think he had a knee at another time or a hammy. But when he was healthy, he was a really electric back for IMG. They had both him and Noah Cain on the same team, by the way, at IMG, which, shocker, they were pretty good. But I think just his ability to be a powerful but also like explosive runner. He has some very nice top end speed when he gets in the open field. That could give Bama's offense a real interesting dynamic as Bryce Young and these new receivers round themselves into form.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had Brian Robinson in my head as just like, well, he's experienced. He's a violent and physical runner, and he's someone that I think could probably, just take care of business. Like he might not end up being your first team all SEC pick, but he could absolutely be effective enough to help this offense go. To hear that, Trey Sanders is out here and, making this kind of impact, to know that Jason McClellan is right there. Brian Robinson is right there. All of a sudden, like life for Bryce Young should be getting much easier. I will ask, and it's worth noting that when Alabama was scrimmaging this weekend, I think that we were down Evan Neal for sure, and maybe one or two other starters. Where's your faith or confidence right now in Alabama's offensive line?
It's honestly fairly high. They've recruited the position very well. I think they've developed the position well. I think Bama started doing some stuff in strength conditioning that a lot of teams aren't doing yet with their more science-based approach with Dr. Matt Ray and those guys. And I expect them to dominate pretty much everybody else up front yet again this year. I don't have a whole lot of concerns about Alabama. I have some questions, right? Can Bryce Young be as good as we think he can be? Can these talented but lesser experienced receivers, be as good? Do they have the replacements in the secondary ready to go? But those are more questions than they are legitimate concerns at this point.
Isn't it funny how you could fill out a whole all SEC team at linebacker with only Alabama linebackers?
Yeah, that's. Also, we did hear about Will Anderson just absolutely crushing people. And I mean, there are times when you have a guy who is so dominant that you have to basically hold him out of scrimmages or drills because he just disrupts everything and doesn't let you get in the type of reps. And it sounds like Will Anderson at times is flashing that type of dominance. So, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's like Will Anderson got pulled off the field. Oh no, is he injured? No, he's just too damn good and he's ruining our practice.
By the way, can we get some contemporaneous camp buzz going right now?
Yeah, for sure.
So check this out. You guys are watching us live or listening to us immediately after this. Northwestern under 6.5 wins minus $1.05 is still out there, and they just announced two things back to back. Number one, Cam Porter is out for the season. That's Northwestern's breakout running back. Number two, I'm going to take a victory lap here. I never bought into the Ryan Helinski hype. I got all kinds of shit for this from South Carolina fans when he was a recruit when I was like, no, he's not even close to the next Trevor Lawrence because they had landed Trevor and then South Carolina landed Helinski and they were like, he's the same. Like,
what?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
He got beat out. They've already announced that they're going with Hunter Johnson.
Which for Hunter Johnson, that is one heck of a rebound. Right?
Or does it mean Helinski just can't play? Because that's what I think.
Okay. I'm going to go with my Hunter Johnson. Congratulations, Hunter, on being able to finally stick the landing or something.
Can we review what Hunter Johnson did in 2019 with this team?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with the live read right here.
It's loading. This is really.
Listen, for those who might not have remember, Hunter Johnson was in a Clemson quarterback room with Kelly Bryant. Right. And that was, I believe he left after spring, but you were looking at who was going to replace Deshaun Watson after Deshaun goes to the league. And Hunter Johnson, 4-star player, blue chip prospect. He was, right there as someone who they figured might have a chance, might have a shot. And obviously he left Clemson. Then he ends up landing at Northwestern. And what did he do at Northwestern?
130th out of 130 teams in passing SP+, 130th in passing explosiveness, 130th in adjusted net yards per attempt, completion percentage 46%, sack rate 9.2%, which is also really, really high, adjusted net yards per attempt before he got benched 1.3, 1-4 touchdown interception ratio.
Not good.
I'm not buying it, man. Northwestern's not making a bowl.
There you go. Any other notes from around the country before we buzz it up on out of here?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. I'll read off these quick hitters. Let me see. Dylan Morris apparently had a pretty good scrimmage for Washington, so that I think gives them some stability there. Certainly, you
needed him to be strong because that was another freshman quarterback because we've got Little Heward out there.
Yes, exactly. And in the ACC, Leonard Taylor, 5-star defensive lineman for Miami, is already wrecking shop out there, as we've been told at 24/7 Sports. So that's good to hear. Kind of a tweener, D-tackle, jumbo in type. I think his future is there on the inside, most likely. Marcel Brooks, former LSU linebacker kid I really like coming out of high school, is transferred to TCU, and it looks like he's actually competing at receiver some. So that would give them an explosive physical presence at receiver. Kind of interesting there.
That's awesome for his transition because Brooks, I think, might have been listed as receiver, maybe not last year, but most of his play was on special teams. So he's clearly in the transitional or was in the transitional period. And if he's going to land, it's great for Max Duggan. It's great for, Quentin Johnston, great for Zach Evans, great for everybody to be able to have someone else that can be a real difference maker.
And then also, Mackenzie Milton has not seized this job yet at FSU.
We haven't talked about that recently.
Yeah. Jordan Travis, I have been told, is legitimately throwing the ball better. It's hard to be worst. I think they were 121st last year in passing SP+, so that's not hard to go down when there's only 127 teams playing ball. But Milton has not lit the world on fire yet. He does not have that job locked up in any way, shape, or form.
Are you able to separate the intellectual from the emotional on that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, of course you are. Do you think Florida State fans would be?
No, probably not. Although most of the time fans will take and just buy into whoever the coach decides to start and be like, oh, look, he's awesome. He's improved this much. And Look, I do generally believe that Jordan has improved, but also if Mackenzie Milton was what he was back at UCF, this is not a competition.
Right. But it's impossible to expect him to be what he was at UCF. The question was whether 75% of what he was at UCF was going to be good enough to beat out Jordan Travis.
I don't know that he's that.
Yeah. Woof. Very interesting ongoings in Tallahassee. We will be sure to keep our eyes on that. You can follow him on Twitter at Bud Elliott3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Keep your eyes peeled. Again, SEC West win totals coming up at win totals locks after that. Bud, thank you very much.
See you, Chip.